Colonel North, in your work at the NSC, were you not assigned at one time to work on plans for the continuity of government in the event of a major disaster?
Mr. Chairman.
I believe that question touches upon a highly sensitive and classified area, so may I request that you not touch upon that, sir.
One of the programs that got exposed during Iran-Contra was Rex 84. And Congressman Jack Brooks, in those hearings, brought up the fact that in reality, FEMA was a cover for a huge continuity of government program in case the American people ever rebelled. And that was the architecture or the blueprint for the illegitimate shadow government to fully take over the functions of the entire federal government, suspend the Constitution, suspend the Bill of Rights, and arrest whoever they wanted to. And FEMA was going to control the camps that the people were going to be put into. And FEMA would be the main governmental institution with different directors over every agency. And now when you watch FEMA on television, it's always a colonel or a general or an admiral in uniform who's over the different departments.
The martial law portions of Rex 84 were outlined in a 1982 memo written by FEMA Deputy John Brinkerhoff. Martial law was to be declared in the event of a national crisis, yet the plan did not define the term national crisis. The plan allowed FEMA to take control of both federal and state governments, appointing military commanders to replace duly elected officials. The plan also called for the rounding up of at least 21 million American Negroes for delivery to numerous military bases converted into prison centers, also known as FEMA relocation camps. Why? Because at that time, African Americans were classified as one of the largest threats to the continuity of the federal government. Who does the federal government consider the biggest threat these days?
The convergence of globalization and technology has created a new brand of terrorism. There were persons who, for whatever reason, came to view their home country as the enemy.
The kind of right-wing, religious-based domestic terrorism.
Disturbing news tonight about homegrown terror.
Part of this is big change in the White House, a new cultural experience, and some of the crazies are coming out of their closet.
Right now, it looks like there is no connection between the men arrested and any known terrorist cell. Homegrown. Yeah, homegrown, I should say.
Folks, we've got a very serious situation here. I'm holding what is called the right-wing extremism, current economic and political climate, fueling resurgence and radicalization and recruitment. And in it, we talked about the fact that they define pro-lifers as domestic terrorists. They put this in a Department of Homeland Security document, this official assessment, now saying pro-lifers, people that believe in end-time prophecies, people that are opposed to the administration's position on immigration, those of us that are standing up for the sanctity of life and for the sanctity of marriage, all of those are now potential, and this is what they're saying, domestic terrorists.
It's a terrorist next door that could be our bigger threat.
They call people who believe in the sanctity of life, who believe in owning firearms, who believe in serving their country in the military and coming back, who are very concerned about the policies that this nation is embarking on, spending too much money, taxing too much. It's all listed right here. These are the domestic right-wing extremists.
1 million names under the watchful eye of the United States. America's so-called terrorist watch list has hit the record number according to one of the country's most prominent civil liberties groups.
That's a lot of people to keep track of. They're adding new people all the time.
It's a secret list that you don't know really quite how one gets on and you don't know how you get off.
They're coming out and profiling huge groups of people. You know, if you voted for a certain political candidate, you should be considered a potential threat. And you couple that with things like the Patriot Act, where if you are a threat in their eyes, you can be held without access to judge, jury, and without access to a lawyer or even to your family. That's very concerning because we've watched our country go through and do this to brown people, you know, overseas. They're rounding up enemy combatants and they're putting them in camps and they are torturing them. That is a fact. We know that.
May 2007, President Bush signed the National Security Presidential Directive 51. The unclassified portion of NSPD 51 states that in the event of catastrophic emergency, a cooperative effort among the executive, legislative, and judicial branches of the federal government, coordinated by the President, will replace normal governmental procedure.
Most Americans would agree that it would be prudent to have a plan to provide for the continuity of government. They have such a plan. They introduced a little sketchy public version that's clearly inadequate and doesn't really tell us what they have in mind. But they said, don't worry, there's a detailed classified version. But now they've denied the entire Homeland Security Committee of the United States House of Representatives access to their so-called detailed plan to provide for continuity of government. They say, trust us. Trust us?
George W. Bush or Barack H. Obama, the corruption, the tyranny just expands like PDD 51, where the president says, Congress, you have no authority over any way the government runs ever again during an emergency. The presidency runs everything. You are literally titular. You are a figurehead. You are ceremonial. And congressmen then on the Homeland Security Committee, as high a level clearance as the president, said, we want to see the entire PDD 51. And the White House says, no, you don't get to see it because PDD 51 removes you from that process. This is high treason against the people. It is high treason to have the executive telling the Congress, you can't see Presidential Decision Directive 51. You can't see its accompanying executive order. You don't have any authority over anything anymore.
FEMA is dysfunctional.
This is high treason against the people.
The FBI's counterintelligence program was a series of covert and often illegal programs conducted by the United States government and aimed squarely at investigating and disrupting dissident political organizations within the United States. According to a Senate Select Committee study chaired by Senator Frank Church and including such members as Phil Hart, Walter Mondale, and Barry Goldwater, the FBI's motivation for conducting these programs was protecting national security, preventing violence, and maintaining the existing social and political order. Targets included the Black Panther Party, the Ku Klux Klan, communist and socialist organizations, as well as non-violent civil rights organizations, anti-war groups, and a broad range of organizations lumped together under the title New Left, which included groups labeled for intensified attention, such as the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and Congress of Racial Equality. Over the course of 4 presidential administrations, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover ordered FBI agents to expose, disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize the activities of these movements and their leaders. Speakers, teachers, and writers, even individual student demonstrators with no group affiliation, were all fair game. Individual case studies revealed that the FBI was successful in preventing the distribution of books, newspapers, and periodicals. They prevented groups from forming and disrupted peaceful demonstrations and large anti-war marches, as well as denied groups and organizations facilities to hold meetings and conferences. According to attorney Brian Glick in his book War at Home, the FBI used 4 main methods for their counterintelligence program. Number 1, infiltration, getting agents on the inside in order to undermine trust and scare off potential supporters. Number 2, psychological warfare, planting false media stories, forging correspondence, making anonymous phone calls, spreading misinformation about meetings and events, setting up pseudo-movement groups run by government agents, and manipulating and threatening parents, employers, landlords, school officials, and others to cause trouble for activists. Number 3, harassment through the legal system. The FBI and police abused the legal system to harass dissidents and make them appear to be criminals. Officers of the law gave perjured testimony and presented fabricated evidence as a pretext for false arrest and wrongful imprisonment. They also discriminatorily enforced tax laws and other government regulations. Number 4, extralegal force and violence. The FBI and police threatened, instigated, and themselves conducted break-ins, vandalism, assaults, and beatings, all in the name of maintaining the existing social and political order.
Increased security for 4 New Jersey Supreme Court justices after their home addresses were revealed in a webcast by a self-proclaimed white supremacist.
Welcome to the Hal Turner Show.
Doesn't a noose symbolize hate, bigotry, division?
Justice.
Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hola, this is Pedro.
Spick,
from San Diego.
Don't call my radio show anymore, you filthy spick animal.
People were being profiled and stopped if they had a certain kind of bumper stickers on their car, like a Ron Paul bumper sticker or a Chuck Baldwin supporter. And as you read the Make report, bits and pieces that were lifted right out of the Project Megiddo report back in 1999 by the FBI, describing what terrorists were, how law enforcement could identify potential terrorists. And I can remember back in the 90s, the FBI was doing an education program with local law enforcement, and what they had was a trifold pamphlet. Again, this was not meant for public consumption, only to be passed around amongst the rank and file in the police. It ran through the list of what a potential terrorist might be or what they might prescribe to. And the list is kind of interesting. If you were a supporter of the Constitution, if you were an ardent supporter of the Second Amendment, or even if you were a person of deep religious conviction, you might be a member of a certain cult. And going back to Project Megiddo, it's all basically the same thing. That if you have any strong beliefs in anything, that you could be a possible threat. You could be a terrorist threat against government structure.
In Missouri, a new document meant to help Missouri law enforcement agencies identify militia members or domestic terrorists has drawn criticism. The February 20 report called the Modern Militia Movement mentions such red flags as political bumper stickers for third-party candidates, such as Ron Paul, who ran for president, talk of conspiracy theories such as the plan for a superhighway linking Canada to Mexico, and possession of subversive literature. So the state police in Missouri have been told that if you see a car with a bumper sticker that opposes the so-called creation of North American Union, the superhighway, that you are probably following a militia member, that you are following an anti-government radical. If you see a car with a bumper sticker that says Ron Paul for president, you might be dealing with a violent radical. Exercise extreme caution.
You're watching Camp FEMA. We're going to go back to the film here in just a moment. But every week I am called by Salon, Newsweek, you name it, saying, Mr. Jones, what's your proof of FEMA camps? And then I give them the evidence that you see in this documentary. And we go over the Military Commissions Act and the fact that Halliburton was in the